Hello and welcome to Lunch and Learn Wednesdays, presented by Venture Portland. I'm your host, Jacob Falkenberg, and thank you all for being here today. Today we're going to be talking about large-scale business district event best practices. So it is June, almost July. That means we are well into event season here in Portland, and a lot of folks are looking to plan events or have events coming up. So we have a special guest today from Revel Events, Amy Theberg, who has been in the Portland events planning business for a long time now. And if you've been to a street fair, she's probably had a hand in it. Welcome, Amy. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm thrilled to be here. I've been in the events business now for longer than I'd care to share, but I will share. My business is 10 years old now, my production business, Revel Events, and I also have owned Block Party Barricades for about 6 years. 7 years now. And I want to talk a little bit about myself and my businesses and how I can help you have great and successful events in your districts. My little bio I have here is I've always been a natural fundraiser, but also a natural wrangler of herding cats. When I was little, I would boss around all the neighborhood kids to direct dance parties or snow day events or things like that. And then also we would always be going door to door to try to collect cans and other things like that to fundraise for a variety of things in my neighborhood. So I started small, and then over the years have really stumbled into this business. And I'll talk a little bit more about my background in a moment. But I think that the main thing to talk about the conclusion in the beginning is I've been able to put my own personality in my businesses. Unlike when you go to a lot of different businesses, when people hire Revel Events, they're hiring me and what my visions are for their events. And so that has made it very personal for me. And then also working with nonprofits has also made it really when I don't feel like going to work, I feel like going to work because I know that it is important to somebody somewhere, and that is what kind of keeps me going. Um, and fun. I'm a professional partier, is what I like to say. And because I like fun, I thought I would do some icebreakers. So you're welcome to take yourself off mute if you'd like to play my game here. So Portland is an event city, and it has been for over a century now. In 1905, there was a big event that happened in Northwest Portland. It was an area called Guild Lake, which is no longer there. This is industrial Northwest now. And they threw an event to commemorate the 100th anniversary of a famed expedition. Does anybody know what this event was called in 1905? You can also put it in the chat if you don't want to unmute yourself. Anyone?
I think I know.
Okay, what
But
is
I'll give
it?
everybody else a chance.
There's more chances. Just yell it out, Jacob.
Lewis and Clark?
The Lewis and Clark Expo. Many people think that this was a World's Fair, and it was not. So it was actually just an exposition for the Lewis and Clark expedition. And it was very important and seminal in developing Portland. We went from 161,000 residents to 270,000 residents in the subsequent 5 years after this event because so many people came to the West. So pretty cool. What the photo that you see here was all built for this expedition, and it's all gone now. Okay, you're warmed up. What's next? So we have the Rose Festival. It started in 1888 when Georgiana Pittock, who you've probably been to the Pittock Mansion, wanted to show off her rose garden essentially, and it became an annual event. It inspired rose plantings citywide based on the way that we can grow roses well here. And then it's become an annual tradition of parades and pageantry. It was also a great dichotomy to like the industry of Portland and sort of basically how dirty and timbery the city was. And so the Rose Festival was really to draw women to want to move here as well. Do you know what year the first Rose Festival began? It was, I'll give you a hint, it was before 1921 and after 1905. Any guesses? It definitely should have made prizes, huh?
I should know this one, especially since this just happened, but I don't know. I'm gonna guess 1912.
Good guess, but wrong. It was 1907. So after the expo happened, they wanted to keep people coming back to the city year after year. And Georgiana was actually a huge reason why this happened. So 1907 was when the first Rose Festival began. Okay, I think I have two more halfway through. This was a special day for basketball fans in the heart of the NBA drafts this week. It's hard to hear about what's happening with the Blazers, but does anybody know why these people were had taken to the streets? Almost 500,000 people flooded onto Broadway. Does anybody know? In 1977? Well, it was the one and only Blazers victory, national championship. So in 1977, we won everything that year, and we haven't done it since. So maybe one of us will get to be part of this parade someday, but not today. The coach, Jack Ramsey, one of my favorite things about this is that he started the parade from his house on his bike. And then suddenly like his neighbors came out and they started following him and he was just excited to be there. And then more and more people came out of their houses and it turned into estimated between 250 and 500,000 fans flooding the streets of downtown. So pretty special day. And I love this picture. And then a little bit more recently, also along the Blazers, this happened in 2020. This is the Burnside Bridge, and Damian Lillard was leading this parade, if you want to call it that, in 2020. Does anybody know what this picture is showing?
I think Linda got it. This one's more recent, so I know you all remember this one.
Yeah, this is the Black Lives Matter protest. And again, Damian Lillard was there kind of blending celebrity with citizen. And he was one of the only celebrities, if you want to call him that, that really came out and was very vocal about his issues that he was having during this time. So maybe some of you were part of this as well. Okay, game time's over. Let's get down to business. Thanks for playing. I should have mentioned that I've lived in Portland my whole life, and my parents and my grandparents have as well. So lots of these. One I lived, and the others I've just heard stories about, and I'm super proud to be a lifelong Oregonian. I would love to say that I came to my job on purpose, but I really didn't. I stumbled into it. I graduated in 2006 from Portland State, go Vikings. And I was thinking I was going to go into community health or public health, and I couldn't get a job at that time. The recession was setting in, and there was not a lot of jobs for social scientists at the time. So I got a job in a windowless room at a call center at the American Cancer Society with the promise that if I stayed there, I could work my way up into some education areas of the organization. And then as people would leave and just sort of a general round of dysfunction at that national nonprofit at the time and a restructuring, I fell into a job of like the boss above my boss above my boss needed to be filled temporarily. And then they just let me have that job. I think I was 23 running the largest, second largest breast cancer fundraiser in the state, making strides against breast cancer and raising a couple $1 million a year with Relay for Life across the state. So it was pretty crazy, but learned trial by fire. and learned a ton about how to produce these kinds of large scale events, and absolutely fell in love. At the time, I was spending a lot of time seeing live music, going to art galleries, just seeing a lot of arts performances, and started making a lot of friends in those areas. And then people would start to ask or talk about the need for funding. And I would say, well, let's throw an event. Let's have a bowling tournament. Let's have a cornhole tournament. Let's do a walk. Let's have a party and a silent auction. And slowly but surely, I was suddenly working on about 15 of these small events. And I started thinking, well, maybe I could just quit my job and do this full time. And therefore, I did. Again, I didn't go to school for fundraising strategy. I just learned by reading as much as I could, going to as many other events as I could, and just listening to people. I also, this was, again in like 2010, 2011, and I was really working on showing up for other people in hopes that then they would show up for me. And one of the biggest catalysts for all this was like my growing Rolodex. Again, I had lived here my whole life. My family's lived here their whole lives. So I just knew a lot of people in town. And so when people would come to a board meeting and say, we need to figure out how to fill this $15,000 funding gap, they'd say, well, maybe we should call Amy Thieberg and see if she has any ideas. So it was great to be on some of these smaller organizations' shortlists. I was talking about funding gaps. I was dealing with my own personal funding gap in 2014 or so, and I needed to figure out how to make some more money. So I started applying for a few jobs outside of just the nonprofit fundraiser area, but they were still in nonprofits. My first street fair job was with the Mississippi Street Fair. I was the vendor coordinator. It's the largest street fair in the state. It typically traditionally has about 40,000 guests, 300 vendors. Again, trial by fire. I did not have any idea what I was doing, and I just pretended that I did and plowed forward. Because of my role in the street fair, I met the amazing, the incredible, the illustrious Katie Meyer. She was working on a whole bunch of street fairs in town, and she owned this little business called Block Party Barricades. As I continued to do more events, walks, and work on a variety of different things outside, I needed more stuff for street closures, tables, tents, chairs, all that kind of stuff. So Katie and I bonded. I started working for her. And then when she decided that she wanted out of the event business because she's saner than the rest of us, I took over her street fairs as their producer, and I purchased her business from her, Block Party Barricades, so she could pursue a new career. Throughout my time, I really realized as I kind of tried to grow and tried to be too many places at once, I really realized that quality over scale was more important, and then keeping like a really small and adaptable team so I could inject my creativity into things, as well as continuing to show up for people in the community and keep up relationships. That is what has made me successful every time I've tried to grow or hire out for my events. It takes the fun out of it for me. Then I'm kind of just doing the paperwork. And the parts that I really like are being able to be creative and have one-on-one conversations with my clients. I think that that is what makes me special. How it's going. So it's been a wild several decade or so. And now I produce about 20 large events per year. I was just telling Jacob, I do all the fundraising for Montevilla Jazz Festival that takes place every summer, but now it's on Labor Day. We have our annual gala this Saturday. I am really known for my street fairs, my fundraisers, and community impacts. Last year, I helped raise over $1 million for a handful of these nonprofits. Super proud of that. And Block Party Barricades has had a weird couple years, even coming out of COVID. It has taken until this year to catch back up with our 2018, 2019 numbers. This summer, I'm finally seeing the similar numbers that I did in those years. And now, because we just have started doing the traffic control for last Thursday, I now work on every single large event that has street closures in Portland. And I am trying not to have a big ego about that because I'm so proud of that and have an amazing team of people that help do a lot of the hard work. I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself and then give you a chance to see some really, really, really dumbed down plans of what to do if you wanted to throw a block party. I also wanted to say a block party could be literally closing down one block. It could be a small street fair. It could be a holiday tree lighting or an Easter egg hunt or a variety of different things. So block party, I'm just using that term and I'm just trying to be really general here. After we go through this, I will answer any specific questions or clarify anything that needs to happen. And this isn't exactly a just do this and you'll be good. There's a lot of other elements to it, but these are some of the big things that I put together. So at least 6 months out, make sure you lock in your date, your venue, and your budget. I'm pretending right now that you're doing this outside, but this could be inside of a brewery or in an event space or at someone's home. If you need sponsors or grants, you should definitely be starting at least 6 months out. There are a ton of grants available. I'm sure you all know about the amazing grant opportunities through Venture Portland. And then there's also 50 other great places that you can go for money that can help fund you. I try to work really hard to get my smaller events, like even Mississippi Street Fair. I don't want just the big businesses on Mississippi Avenue to have to fund those. Try to get money from outside the district and grant money for those events as much as I can. If you have a really, really, really big multi-day vision, earlier action than 6 months would be very important. 5 months out, gather your team. So none of this happens in a silo. None of this happens just on your own. So if you're going to be especially on a street blocking businesses or homes, you want to get with those businesses, get with those neighbors and let them know your plan and get them on board. Most street closures for anything that you're making money on, so if you're charging for vendors or sponsors or anything like that, you need a nonprofit partner. Most of you probably have a business district that is a nonprofit, but if you don't, for instance, the Clinton Street Fair, they didn't have a district for a while after COVID. And so we worked with a local nonprofit, the Jeremy Wilson Foundation, and they were how we were able to close the streets, and they were our beneficiary for that street fair for 2 years while the Division Clinton team was getting back together. Figuring out how you're going to pay for this is huge too. The vendor fees mostly pay for most fairs. Most fairs are also not a huge moneymaker, but if you can pay for it to happen and boost the businesses in your district, I call that a win. So how many vendors can you have? If you have a block with 100 feet, that fits 10 by 10 tents. So in theory, you could do 10 vendors on that street, on that block. Can you do them on both sides? Is there enough room? Is the street wide enough? The city makes you have a fire lane of 12 feet down every street. So figuring out how you can do that. You definitely would want to work with an AV company unless you have someone in your life that is a professional with that, because that's a really important piece if you have any kind of entertainment. And then starting to recruit vendors. You can use places that are like public forums that are free. Also, I've had people reach out to me in the past and say, hey, like, could I ask you to do some sort of like a trade for a sponsorship to send out a vendor call to some of your vendors in Southeast Portland or something like that. And I've done things like that in the past because my vendors are typically segmented by street fairs. I can do it by neighborhood, which is pretty handy. And I am a big firm believer in rising tides raises all ships. So I'm not, I don't like to gatekeep people and opportunities for people. 4 months out, I think you definitely want to start your committee or your stakeholder meetings. And the people that I would invite to that is every neighbor, every business in the area, and then whoever your vendors, your entertainment, like invite whoever you want to keep it going, and then do that monthly. And figure out what kind of support you're going to have from your people and survey them like, hey, who has a big truck? Who has some tents we can use? Does anyone have a business that we can ask because we still need $500 for sponsorship? Who knows a band that might want to play? And so on and so forth. The fundraising piece for getting money for these events is really important. I think it's absolutely the people are your magic, and I believe that completely. But I also believe in compensating people for their time and their energy and their efforts. So I never ask a band to come and play at my event for exposure. I may only have $300, but being really upfront with with artists, with bands, with speakers, with vendors, whoever it may be, about what your budget is and if they're willing to work within those parameters, that is really important. The flip side of that is there's a lot of free entertainment that you can also rely on too. And those are things like, is there a karate school in your neighborhood that maybe the kids would want to come and have, like we've done belt ceremonies at on the stage of certain events, and that's free entertainment. Plus then the parents come and they bring their partners and their other kids, and that gets people out to your event. So that's just one example of some things that are maybe not considered like super high profile entertainment, but if you can get 30 more people out to your event and get an hour filled on your stage, I think that that is a really smart use of your time. Every 3 months out, every organization has a different timeline. So, and the permitting process is real. If there's one thing to hire my business for, it would be for the permitting, because it's a huge headache. The city keeps promising they're going to streamline this, and that has not happened yet. So you need a PBOT street use permit to be able to close down a street and or a sidewalk. If you're going to have amplified music, you'll need a noise variance. That's a different permit and a different organization. If you have food trucks, you will need to alert the Multnomah County Health Department. If you have a tent with walls or any kind of propane on site, or a corral, so think of it like a beer garden or something like that, that's over about 200 square feet, you'll need a Portland fire permit. And if you do have alcohol in the street, you'll need an OLCC permit. And there could be a couple other permits that you might need. For instance, if you're going to hang up a banner, that's a whole other PBOT permit process that you need to go through, and so on and so forth. So this is all very important. It didn't note here insurance, but you aren't going to get very far if you aren't able to provide a certificate of insurance for the event. Even if you're using another nonprofit vendor, you'll need your own certificate of insurance for the city. So 3 months out would be like the latest that you can shop around for that. And sometimes, depending on the event, you can get a certificate of proof of insurance for free. But if you're having a large event, say Montevilla Street Fair, it's probably about $4,500 for your insurance for one day. So that's just something to think about on top of all the other pieces for your budget. Planning out for that ahead of time is really important. Are you going to need a security company? How many people are going to be there? I think the city's threshold is 2,500 people and above. You need an EMT on site. But if you have 1,800 people, like I still think that's a good idea to have an EMT. So there's things like that to worry about or to plan for. This is also a great time to work on a poster and an event graphic, because as you're recruiting these people, you can send that out and it makes it super simple. So you're not typing the same thing over and over again. You can say, please see my poster below, and it will have all your details. Again, a great time to start working on your musicians, your performers, and your entertainment. And that I use that very loosely. Okay. And then if you're not exhausted by then, you just keep going. 2 months out, Bathrooms are important. I have a note on bathrooms in a little bit. If you're closing the streets, you might need to have cars relocated that are violating your no parking stuff. So you'll have to have a towing company to relocate them. Keep your volunteer recruitment going, put out those asks. How to figure out how many volunteers you might need, I would break out your roles. So if you want someone to work at your info booth, someone to take care of your garbage, someone to set up, and someone to hand out popsicles, you might need 1, 2, 3, 4 people, and just recruit a couple extras, figure out if they're going to work the whole day or they just going to work for 2 hours, and make it make sense for what you need, and then recruit more because people get sick, people don't show, and things like that. For marketing, there's a ton of great free resources like PDX Parent Newsletter, and there's the Mercury and the Willamette Week have free event listings. Craigslist has free event listings. Nextdoor. I use all of those, and then I typically spend a little bit of money on social media, and then maybe do something like PDX Pipeline because it's a lot more affordable than Willamette Week or Portland Monthly or something like that. You can also write a press release and try to get what we call earned media. So it's not media you're paying for, but maybe someone will come and do a story on you. People are always looking for positive things to write about right now. So I think it is worthwhile to try to put together a press release. If you don't know where to start, I really breaks my heart to say, but using AI for things like this, they can come up with great templates for you, and just give it a Google. Again, I've been faking it till I made it for 11 years now. So feel free to take that feather out of my cap and just Google it and ask questions and ask the people around you. Um, there's so many logistics that will come up day of that you will have never thought of. I still get surprised every event that I do. I'm like, I can't believe I didn't think to have an EpiPen in my emergency kit or something. But there's a lot of things that if you do think ahead about, it makes for all those other surprises, makes them a lot easier, like parking. I've had people show up and be like, I have to plug this in. And I'm like, well, we don't have any power here out at Zidell Farms. It's just a gravel parking lot. So making sure you're thinking through what needs electricity, what has batteries, what needs to be charged ahead of time, how many power banks do you own, or can you order on Amazon to have at your event to make sure your iPad doesn't run out of juice when you're trying to sell t-shirts, things like that. And just really, if you make a packing list and then you think of everything that needs to happen to get that, the garbage cans that you have need to be cleaned out or the things need to be charged, you can make a sub list by making a list of everything that needs to be there. You can easily make a sub list of all the things that happen to get the things there. Will you have enough room in the back of a truck to take the garbage to the dump? Do you need to get a dumpster? Is there a place where talent can be? What are you going to feed your volunteers while they're working for you? Are you going to feed and water your entertainers? All those things. And then a month out, most of the things are going to be done. You're going to be tweaking. So you're going to be hiring any additional staff that you might need. All of the events that I do are typically rain or shine. And the only two things that have ever canceled an event for me have been COVID. And that was, again, obviously not our choice, and wildfire smoke. I put in here a guideline for kind of like OSHA guidelines about how, if people are working or volunteering at a certain degree of heat, they need different breaks. If an AQI, air quality, is at a certain level, people aren't supposed to be outside and they can't work. So there's things like that that will help you make those determinations if you need to. If it's just wet or hot, then cooling stations, misters, umbrellas, tents, those are the kinds of things that you'll want. Tarps, those are the kinds of things you'll want to stock up on in the weeks ahead. Posters, if you are going to print posters, they should definitely be out 3 weeks ahead of time. The reason why I like posters are, yes, to promote the event, but also so that you can put all your sponsors on the posters, and it gives them a little bit of extra love out in the world and gets their name associated with the cool thing that you're doing. And finally, social media strategy is not something that I do well. It's something that I have my nephews and other staff people that I have help me with. And it's figuring out where and when to boost posts, if you need to, or I like to use strategy like working with, I'd say an influencer, but like anybody with a lot of followers that may be willing to promote your event in exchange for something that you have. So, you know, if you have a really nice restaurant in your district that might be willing to donate $100 gift certificate, maybe you could trade that to an influencer to have them post about your event on their channel and things like that. Okay, cruising through the rest. Day of, bars and bathrooms. Those are the two things that people always find. So putting them wherever you want people to go and spreading them out is a great idea. And then having signage, right? Do chalk letters on the ground and with arrows. We do that all the time. And create signage around so that people know where to find those things. And then making sure that anybody that looks like they work at your event with a clipboard knows exactly where to point for things like bars and bathrooms. That's always what people want to know, as well as entertainment schedules. I always have a little meeting and a printout for my staff at my street fairs so that if people say, hey, what time or what stage is this person playing at? Instead of saying, I don't know, they can say, let me look. That's always important. Having an event survival kit is also just like a life survival kit, but having this in the back of your car, even after your stuff that you'll make for your event, is always good. These are some of the things always found in mine. And bathrooms. So if you're at a place where there are no other bathrooms, I would up this math. But if you're at a place, again, like Mississippi Street Fair, there's a lot of businesses with bathrooms that people will be using. So we try to go for about 1 in every 500 guests at a time, not throughout the whole day. And then I always make sure that we have extra ADA toilets, A, because it's good for people who are differently abled, but B, it's really good for people with kids. So if you're doing events that are really heavily family friendly, it's really hard for a kid to fit with a mom into a regular porta potty. So it's really important to have that offering, you know, and depending on what you're doing, for other very family friendly events, we've done a tent for breastfeeding. We've done tents for diaper change stations and things like that if you need to do that. So those are things to consider your audience. What might your audience need? Your whole event could be great, and then they could have one bad experience of something that you could have prevented, like not being able to change their child, and that will put a bad taste in their event or their mind about your event for the future. Finally, one of the most important things that I've learned is leave the space better than you found it. Even if you are in an event space and they say, all you have to do is just take out the garbage, I like to go the extra mile and try to leave the space better than I found it. But that's particularly true when you're using spaces that are shared, like a street. I like to make it cleaner than it is when I started. For sponsors and other supporters, making sure you take an hour and take a lot of photos of those things, and then they make for great thank you notes afterwards. I like to send my sponsors a rolled up poster. Maybe it's signed by volunteers or a band, and then I send them some printed photos of here's your logo and here's all these people interacting with the thing that you helped support. If you can do a survey, it's really hard to survey people from a street fair, but you can also survey your vendors or businesses in the area to see how it went. Throwing some sort of a thank you happy hour either that day, depending on the event, or in the future. Maybe you're not even paying for anything. Maybe you're just offering a time for people to come give you feedback and they're still paying for their own stuff. People still appreciate the opportunity to be asked. And most importantly, like no later than the next day, write down what worked and what didn't, because even by Tuesday or Thursday of the next week, it starts to fade and it starts to not, those little things just leave the mind and you start thinking of something else. So make sure that you're writing everything down while it's fresh. Um, that has been so much talking and so much information. I also compiled a list of my vendors that I like to use for a variety of things that I'm sure Jacob will share afterwards. But these are all professionals that will help guide you in the right direction if you would like to take a crack at doing this yourself. And these are the kinds of people that I would be working with if you were to hire one of my businesses. But these are, to me, the best in the biz at what they do. Okay, I think that's it.
Thank you, Amy. That was so much great information. I know, you probably learn something new every event that you do, even after doing this for 10 years. You still are coming up with things that you didn't know before. And
Absolutely.
I want to give everybody an opportunity to pick your brain a little bit, ask you some questions. I know people in the room have some events coming up. So, what are you wondering about? What are you worried about? What are you excited about? How can Amy help? So, feel free to chime in at any time. Personally, I am wondering about fundraising. So events are expensive. I think ideally you want to generate enough revenue to cover the cost of the event itself. In a perfect world, you would make revenue to help pay for the event next year or what other programming that you're doing later in the year. So I'm just wondering, Amy, if you had any tips around how to approach a potential sponsor, or how to generate revenue aside from sponsorships, to pay for the event itself.
Yeah, so to me, there's sort of three legs of funding. One would be sponsors, creating a one pager of opportunities, and leaving it open-ended. So for instance, we've been selling Mississippi Street Fair sponsorships for a few months, and we offer 4 different levels. And then at the bottom, it says, if you want to get involved, but you don't see a level that fits your budget, let's talk. And then that's just a coffee meeting or a phone call. But we kind of break out 3 to 4 different levels. I don't like much more than that. I think that's confusing. And I just try to keep a one pager. And then I have a big list of people that I've created over the years of people in districts or corporations that I know have been generous, and just start with them. Working with larger companies, like mid-sized to large companies in your districts, like I don't remember what it's called now, but like Cash and Carry or New Seasons, Fred Meyer's, grocery stores are really good. We've had a lot of luck with like banks and community banks, credit unions, and then like real estate people, mortgage businesses, things like that. And you likely already know 10 people off the top of your head that you could ask for, a small gift of it can be a big gift for some, but a small gift for others of a $500 contribution to be a part of the event. And kind of going from there. So a one pager is really important with sponsors to just lay out what you're going to give them and be as creative as possible. If you're like, your logo is going to be on the poster and then your logo is going to be on our website, what else can you offer them? Are they going to get a seat at the table at the event? Can you do something special for them? Are they going to get a chance to go on stage? What are they going to want? And try to meet them where they're at. Um, then you have the vendors. So if you're doing an event that's large enough, you can make, 30, 40, 50, $60,000 on event registration. If you're, going to have 200, 300 vendors. If you're only going to have 20, what is the right price for vendors to pay in? So even businesses that are part of districts, members of districts, still have to pay something in my street fairs that I manage. Sometimes it's $50 and sometimes it's $50 off, just depending on what it is. But we are investing in the real estate of a street that day or of a venue that day. And so they need to help pay the freight on that for the opportunity to do business in that area. Honestly, even if they don't want to have do business in the street, but they want their space open so that guests can walk directly into their business, we come up with a structure of how much that costs as well for each business district, each street fair. But typically to me, vendors pay for the logistics of their event, and then sponsors pay for a lot of the fun of the event. So any of the entertainment and things like that is typically how I look at that. Allison, oh, and then wait, sponsors, vendors, oh, and grants. That was the other thing. So you can often get grants for a certain event or for your district, and that they can be earmarked for certain things, like paying for a planner or paying for certain pieces of an event. So those are the three ways to make sure that the event makes money, so that you're not going in the red. Okay, Allison, go ahead.
Hi.
Hi,
Hi, that was so much great information. So appreciate it. Yeah, I'm
good.
Elwood Moreland Business Alliance. We are working with Block Party Barricades for our first ever street fair. We're
I'm
very
so
excited.
happy. Yes.
Yeah, it all kind of came about in April, so we're sort of hustling to get everything ready in time. But since this is our first time, our goal is to make it and then make it better. Um,
Uh-huh.
so we have a lot of these things sort of lined up, but I have a couple specific questions about for you about some things that you mentioned, like security and EMT and booking the tow company and sort of what comes along with that. I think we've been wavering on security on whether or not we could use volunteers in our business alliance or if it's worth hiring a security team. Especially considering this is our first time and it's a little bit of a lower scale than, the hopes are in the future.
Mm-hmm.
What would be the process of hiring a security and what would you recommend for something like our size? It's, 65, 75 vendors, 4 blocks. Do you think that's probably always a good rule of thumb?
The like if you are yelled at like one time and it sucks really bad, then you're always going to be willing to find that $600 to pay for a security guard to
Yeah.
make them go do your dirty work. Most security companies won't send one person, they work in pairs for safety for them. I'm actually realizing I didn't put a safety or a security person on there, but I'll add that, Jacob, before maybe you send this out, or I can add that. I have a couple of great companies that I've worked with in the past.
Okay.
Also, if you're ever doing anything with alcohol and need wristbanding, alcohol monitors through the OLCC permitting process, those companies will also be able to do that. And then hiring EMT. So yes, I would suggest you to have security. I also sometimes don't hire them for the whole time, but I'll maybe bring them in like 2 hours into the event because they charge hourly.
Okay.
So I might have them come in a little later because in the morning as it's getting started, it's usually manageable for volunteers or myself. And then as it gets going and it gets crazier, I just like to have that extra. And then also if anything does happen and you didn't have security, I'm always like haunted by those fears. So just put that little pressure on you that you'll want to know that like, if something bad happens and they write about you in the newspaper and they say like, and they didn't even have a security guard, you're going to feel really bad. um, but yeah, I would say that that's probably like a $500 bill
Okay.
to have 1 or 2 people come for 4 hours or something like that. And I say it's heavily worth it. The EMT is a little bit less important because what happens at our events is that if there's an emergency, um, then we call 911. So
Mhm.
the EMT is typically giving out sunscreen and band-aids. And then for like the drunk guy that's fallen and skinned his knee, they like get him to the side and like calm him down.
Okay.
But they're not doing like tracheotomies or anything at the event.
Okay.
The way that I do it is I work with like Portland Fire. I will just reach out to like my local station or the station in the district and say, hey, we have this event coming. We would love to have an EMT or even not an EMT, but like a firefighter that's trained in these things to come volunteer for a few hours. If you have
Okay.
like a nurse practitioner, it's not like a company. I mean, I'm sure there is, but the AMR is who we used to be able to use and they don't do events anymore
Okay.
because of their staffing shortage. So you have to get a little grassroots about it. But
Okay.
even if you just have a nurse or someone that's worked in an ER or someone that like, isn't going to cry if they see blood,
Mhm.
um, to just help the person be there until the ambulance comes. That's really what it is. So I would just think about it like that, if that makes
Okay.
sense.
Great. And then as far as the tow company, like
Oh,
having
yeah.
somebody, like if we're working with Block Party, I know I was kind of sort of talking about the ins and outs and what that will be like for setup. What are your recommendations around that? Just have somebody like on call to come when needed?
Yeah. So a couple things. One, if your event is going to start at 10, try to, and you've already done your paperwork, I've seen your TCP, but like try to always start your event 4 hours earlier than your event
Oh,
starts, because then you in the future, and then you get an hour of like, ah, like, like there's now a bunch of broken glass here, or now like, oh, and I always bring my leaf blower to my
uh,
events, because a lot of times there will be something gross that I don't want to touch, and I just like blow it away. Um, lots of latex gloves. But the um the tow company, I use a company called Speeds Towing. You need to call them ahead of time, at least a couple weeks, and just say, hey, I have this event, I have the street closure permit, and we want for someone to come and relocate cars if needed. So then you get there at 6 o'clock and a.m. and you're like, okay, there's 3 cars parked here and the signs are up. PBOT offers this service, but PBOT has said millions of times that they may or may not be able to come help you.
okay. Yeah.
So I take matters into my own hands and I hire Speeds Towing. So they relocate cars just around the corner, just out of your footprint, and they don't take the car, they don't impound the car. So it's pretty safe to have that happen. And then they give you a list of like, the Dodge Ram is now on 37th instead of Belmont or whatever. And then they give you a list. You have that at your info booth, and then you just know what to tell the angry person when they come up to you and say, "Where's my car?"
Right.
Some companies charge $50 a car for relocation. Other companies charge an hourly fee of like $200 an hour or whatever. So this is the motivator to make sure that your no parking signs are very good. And
Yeah.
if you're in an area with a lot of bars, that's the worst, because you don't want people who have been drinking to like move their car.
Right.
And so those are the places where you want to make sure you get up a lot earlier. But then like my Clinton Division Street Fair, I've never had to move any cars. So you just never know
Yeah.
what to expect. But if you give yourself that buffer time, that's really what that's for.
So if we hadn't, we only have our permitting starting about an hour and a half before the fair starts. So again, just first time figuring these out. Would you recommend, because those no parking signs are going to be up ahead of time, if I was there at, 7:30 to start that process, if any cars left behind, is there any issues with doing that before the official permit begins?
Yeah, because then they say that you're stealing the cars, which is sticky. Um, but what I would do is I would call Peabot, Sal, or Sam, or whoever you're working with, and just say, can I move my time back? And then just let them know that it's not for any reason other than the parking removal. And then you talk them through, because their biggest concern is probably TriMet. So just ask them if that's possible, and they'll usually do it. They're really good about that. And then, just make sure that the tow company is there right away, and that, if you want to be really sure, I'd go down the day before and just make sure that like all your signs are up and that there's no confusion, just as like an extra. But yeah, just get there and do it as quick as you can. And it's going to be chaotic as hell, and you're going to be fine.
Final specific question before you move on. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
My other question is about like chalking out vendor booths and when you think a good timing to do that is. I'm realizing that that's sort of something that wasn't brought. I didn't, think about when putting the permit in initially, was how much time that would take to block out 4 blocks of booth numbers.
Yeah.
If I was doing that the night before, even if there's still some cars left on the street and trying to work around it, would that probably be your recommendation of getting our team to try to do that the night before?
Absolutely. I usually do it 24 hours before, as early in the morning as possible. And then I make sure that people are wearing reflective vests. You can get them on Amazon or at like any kind of like sporty like Dick's or anything like that. Make sure people are wearing vests because people will start to not pay attention and then cars are going to be parking and it's scary. But I go really early in the morning, like 6 or 7, and I buy coffee for everyone helping me. And then I have one person looking at the clipboard and then one person with chalk. And so they say, okay, mark here, get a little measurer stick. You can also get those on Amazon. Do not try to use tape measure, you'll die. It's so much harder. And then you just go 10 feet or 10.5 feet or 12 feet or whatever your spots are. And then you mark that with a big line and then mark the booth number in the middle. And then do the next one and just keep going. I would plan for a first time event, like an hour per block. And you'll need if you just do it with 2 people, you'll need, probably 4 hours for that. And that sucks, but it's fine. And then the morning of the event, you'll go back over it and you'll just look for the ones that are sort of light or that where people have parked or rubbed off or whatever. And you'll just kind of like fill those in a little bit more. And that should help a lot.
Okay, great. That's so helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, great. That's
And
all.
call me anytime if you have more questions, and I'll make sure we get you security and then Speed's towing info.
That would be great. Thank you so much. Super appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Okay, I think we have just about 5 minutes left, but I did see that Dr. Amato had their hand up. Did you have a question?
Yes, I did. Just really quickly, I'm thinking it through on the nonprofit angle when wanting to throw an event. Is that strategy, or is it just kind of knocking on the door of any nonprofit to see if they would be willing to partner with you on an event?
First of all, hi, Ebony.
Hi, Amy. I was trying to just make it formal. Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing well.
Yeah, so I think there's absolutely strategy to it. The way that I look at it is if they're going to be a true nonprofit partner, they're going to be
Hmm.
helping to promote you and then also perhaps be a volunteer world for you to use. So like I always wanted to use people like when I first began, like Children's Cancer Association, things that you have a ton of volunteers, really large organizations that you knew that if you ask them to put out a volunteer call for you, you're going to get people back. With that being said, you can also figure out things like, again, for the Clinton Street Fair, when we did that, the Jeremy Wilson Project didn't give us very many volunteers, but they knew a lot of bands. And I really wanted that to be a really amazing music as
Hmm.
as the focal point for that event. And so I was able to ask Jeremy, like, help me find these 4 bands and here's my budget and let's work together for that, because that piece was really important. So I think there's absolutely strategy to it. A lot of people will just use their business district, and that's fine, but that doesn't mean you have to only have one. You can have more than one nonprofit partner, and that can depend on what, like, you can decide what you're going to give them for that, if anything, but you can make that really clear up front, like, we would like you to help with this in exchange for an in-kind sponsorship, is how it can
Gotcha.
work as well.
So, so it's not expected that they would get, and I don't want to come across as selfish, but I'm just wondering, would they be getting like 50% of the proceeds? Would they get 25, 10, or you're saying most nonprofits will negotiate that percentage or whatever their benefit is, their monetary benefit
I think that
to align?
you just have to decide up front, like, what you're willing to give up. Profits are really
Okay,
hard because most of these events are like eking by, but what are
right.
the other things that your event needs that you could trade for is sort of how I would look at it. The, again, Clinton example, I couldn't have done that fair without Jeremy. And so I decided on an amount ahead of time that we were going to pay him in exchange for partnership plus in-kind sponsorship. So
Gotcha. Okay.
if you can't do it without someone, they should definitely have some financial gain. But if you can and they just are adding in some way, I would say find something that they have that you want and that you have that they want.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you.
Um,
Awesome. So much great information. I know we could probably go on forever, but we are almost out of time here. And I just want to thank Amy for taking the time out of her day to talk to us and give us all this great tips and tricks that she's learned over the years as we head into event season. And I'll be sending a follow-up email tomorrow with a copy of Amy's slides, as well as a link to the recording that you can share with the other businesses in your district that weren't able to make it. Yeah, if you are putting on an event, you need some help, certainly reach out to Amy, Revel Events, Block Party Barricades, and they can definitely make your life a lot easier. So thank you so much, Amy, and thank you all for being here.
Absolutely. And I'll just say too that even if your entire business district isn't able to do something or ready to do something, Ebony and I know each other through Mississippi Street Fair. She just opened an amazing boozy coffee shop or a boozy ice cream shop called Tipsy Scoop. And I worked with her just briefly on doing a block party just for her business. So you can think really big about what a whole entire district street fair might look like, or maybe one or two businesses might want to try to team up to do something small on a side street or something that can be really inexpensive. And that's things that we advise on as well. So don't think that the only people that we work with are these big, large people. I'm happy to have conversations at any size of event, and those are the ones that typically grow into something else. So make sure you, if you have any ideas, reach out to us and we would love to help.
Absolutely. Start small and go from there. That's
Mhm.
great advice. Thanks. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.